Welcome to Your Morning Cup
with iBenz Academy.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Kara.
Woo!
And today we're really excited because we're going to start this episode by drawing a card. We wanted to connect with the high frequency human collective of Earth and have a look-see about what to talk about today.
Can I first make a comment?
Of course.
Do you notice how in our openings, we kind of have a perfectionist thing going on?
Have you met us? Do we need to restart?
No, it's great. I just laugh and giggle because I love driving to the res, and I love that every time you listen to it, it's kind of slightly different intro to the podcast. For us, it's we can't do it.
Has to be the exact same.
I'm sure maybe there's little bits here and there, but we've got some perfectionist things going on.
Yeah. And when you work with Inelia, you're working with formlessness.
That's true. Yeah. Larry does so good with formlessness.
He does. Thank goodness for Larry.
Gosh. Yeah.
Bringing some structure to
totally.
Formlessness.
Totally. Yay, Team Larry.
Yay, Team Larry.
All right. So we're connecting to the high frequency human collective.
Yes. And we are using...
Of Earth.
Oh, yeah. Of Earth.
Sorry.
Yes. Have to be specific. We're using the deck from Kyle Gray, the Angels and Ancestors Oracle card deck. This is the same deck that Inelia has used in the Emergency Lecture series. And if you want to learn more about how to use Oracle cards in a street smart, high frequency way, check out the Emergency Lecture series because Inelia goes into her mystical methodology of how to do cards and use them for high frequency guidance. So that's what Ashley's doing right now. So check out the series if you want to learn more how to do that.
Okay, we're just shuffling a deck. What should we talk about today?
I've got my morning cup of tea here.
Okay, will you split the deck?
Absolutely. Cutting the deck.
Cut the deck, split the deck. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we going to talk about today?
Ooh, let's see.
Oh my gosh. Ooh, gorgeous card.
We have the Air Guardian. Shift your perception.
Ooh, all right, let's check it out. What does this card want to tell us? The high frequency human collective of Earth want to tell us. Do you want to describe it for everybody?
Well, just looking at the card, it's a really beautiful card. What pops for me, well, first, it's a picture of a woman, and she's got this very grand, beautiful headdress on, and her hair is blowing in the wind, and she's looking right at you in the card. But what popped for me when I first looked at it was the wings that she has. They almost look like angel wings, but they could be even like bird wings, And also her headdress really stood out as well. It looks like she has this very big, sacred power object that she uses to enhance her perception, which... That's what it says on there, shift your perception. And actually, before the podcast started, Ash and I were talking about the element of air and connecting with the element of air. So that's a pretty cool,
very cool
synchronicity there.
Yes. For me, the first thing I noticed was the headdress as well. That's really popped for me. And her eyes also. With the headdress, it's just... There's a femininity to it. There's this flowiness in the whole image as well that really flows with the headdress and the style, the artwork, which, of course, goes in line with the air. And then just her eyes, it's there's so much behind them. It's just drawn with a way that there's a lot of wisdom there. And shifting your perspective, really, you could tap into other perceptions of wisdom, right? When shifting your perspective or perception, I should say. Okay, let's read what they have to say about this card. So the message is Change the way you think, and you will change your whole reality.
Change your mind, change your life.
The Air Guardian card represents the angels of the air element. Traditionally, air is all about thoughts, thinking, and everything that's happening in the mind. So these angels can help you to uncover any thoughts that you have come back to haunt you from the past and to see the world more clearly. They are guiding you to change the way you think about certain situations, as this could be standing between you and greatness. The extended message is, when this card arises, it's an opportunity to learn about your way of thinking. You are being guided to recognize that not all you see is exactly the way you see it. Sometimes the mind can play games, and sometimes our perceptions can be wrong. If you are being challenged or feel that there's a lack of clarity in the direction in your life at the moment, there's a good chance the way you're thinking or what you're focusing on has a lot to do with that reality. You are being guided to open your eyes and your mind, go beyond any limits you have set for yourself, and recognize that the way you see the world is how you will experience the world. Opportunities are moving in your direction, but they will only open up for you if you are ready to do the internal work to support them. Very cool card. I love that we literally just use the air essence.
And our third eye essence, too.
And our third eye essence.
Which is also about perception.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this feels so relevant because the element of air alchemically represents the mental realms, thinking, thought, cognition, and also it's a very connective element. We all are connected through air on this planet. Humans need air to breathe, and even like the trees, the plants bring the air that we breathe, and vice versa. We give the air that they breathe. And what we've been talking about and looking at for the last couple weeks, especially with the upcoming emergency lecture series, it's all about shifting your perspective of the split. Like, that's really what the series is about. It's like, we're here, we're going through a split, there's a lot of stuff going on, clearly. It's been a wild ride the last year and a half. And it's really, how do we respond, right? And what the series goes into a lot and talks about at great depth is, how do you shift your perception for a high frequency outcome? So this seems like a very clear guidance from the human collective of Earth to have your eyes wide open, be aware of your programs, and really look and see what's happening from a place of empowerment and conscious choice, that you can shift your perception in a high frequency way.
Yeah, well said. So I think in relation to case studies, why don't we talk about a little bit about some times where maybe we've shifted our perception and it's just totally changed our reality?
Ooh, yeah. We've probably got a lot of examples, huh?
I can think of one example.
Just one.
Just one
Okay.
for now.
Okay. Tell us.
So, let's see. Where does this story begin? So I was carrying a belief, if you will, that it all stemmed to unworthiness. Yeah, it was a program on unworthiness. And at one point in time, I was going to the shaman shack on a regular basis because I think it was like over the last year or so, during the colder months, in the winter and fall season. And I would go over, and they have an amazing soaking tub there outside, for those of you who don't know, and it's right along the creek, and it's just absolutely gorgeous.
So gorgeous.
And Larry and Fred are just amazing. They're wonderful grooms of Gaia, and the soaking tub, you have to like stoke a fire and get it going, and it's like,
it takes time.
way more fire skills than I've ever had in my life. The first fire I ever lit was when I moved to the Olympic Peninsula, so it takes some skills, and so the end time, and so they would put all that time and effort to help like get it going, and then the fire as it heats up the water. Anyway, I was going I'd say not like fairly often to go over and soak. But when I would go, it was purposely going to soak in the tub, and I would show up and okay, I'm going to do my soak. And after I was done, I always had this kind of energy or feeling in me of a perception that they didn't invite me over and I invited myself over. So I'm just going to like be as little bit of a problem as possible and not impose on their evening. And so I just kind of like, okay, thanks so much for setting the fire in my bath. And now I'm going to go.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, okay, thanks, bye. And, and then like, it's funny, like come to find out later, like there was another perception that, that it's like the folks on the other side are like, what? She doesn't want to hang out with us?
Why does Ashley leave so fast?
She doesn't like us, or who knows what, right? But like things like that were coming off because I would like rush out so quickly and I wouldn't hang out. And it wasn't until I had a shift in my perception and awareness that actually like I made an assumption that they didn't like I would be interrupting their evening. And once I realized that, no, like, this is great. They want to actually hang out. This isn't an interruption. Then we could just hang out and have a good time and enjoy each other's company. So it was like a small thing, but it was actually a really big thing because in a lot of ways I saw how that assumption and that perception that I had based off of this program of unworthiness and, like, oh, I don't want to disrupt and take up too much space or whatever. Based off of that, I had like built this whole way of interacting with my tribe. And it actually had built this like separation that was just like growing and growing and growing between myself and the tribe or members of the tribe. And once I was able to become aware of it, shift my perception, it completely changed. And now when I go over, for better or for worse, for Larry and Fred, it really is an opportunity. We get to hang out. We just have a good time. And I'm not holding back thinking I'm imposing or social norms and what's like, what would be the right thing. They didn't ask me to be here. So, those are just, it's like, drop it, it's, we've established a relationship enough that I know now, like, that's okay. Like coming and hanging out with them is totally fine.
Yeah, just be you. It's probably less tiring too, right? You can just be you.
Yeah, for sure. And then like, things start to build and perceptions start to build off of those type of experiences. Because then I kind of would feel like, oh, maybe there's something weird going on. Then, you're picking up on the interaction with people in that situation and then looking at it through your filters. So then, like, it could fester, things like that. And it was so nice. Once I dropped it, I was like, oof, done.
Nice.
And much better. Yeah.
How did you become aware of what was happening? In other words, before you shifted your perception, like, how did you see it?
I think it started coming up. Actually, there was a time where you and I had a conversation, and I don't remember the particulars about the conversation. But there was a time where that was coming up, and somehow it made me think of this and like the worthiness and connecting with my tribe, and like think of this dynamic, right? And it's a dynamic. It's like, to your point, is once you're done with it, it's like, oh wow, what a relief. Okay, it's like this thing that you're maintaining that you don't realize is like taking some energy and effort. And then through my training with Inelia, focusing at one point, I was really focusing on becoming more available and being more emotionally available to people and to my tribe. And what does that mean? And I had a perception that meant, oh, if you have like you're in a hard situation or having a tough time, I'll be there for you. And that's emotionally available. But what I learned through that experience was that's not actually the case. What emotionally availability is actually spending time together. And so it was like that. I guess I could say that was another piece of it. So as I started becoming aware of what's emotionally available and what is it to be emotionally available to others, then I could look at it, and I was looking at it and figuring out how could I be emotionally available, and realizing that I wasn't emotionally available in that situation. And then, of course, Inelia dropped some truth in my direction. I was like, oh, so much, this all makes so much more sense. And the different perceptions going on. And then I could see that in that particular dynamic, how I created some separation for myself. Right?
It's amazing how our programs can filter our perception.
Yes.
Even just that program of like, what does it mean to be emotionally available? Or what makes a good friend a good friend? It's like, yeah, when we're there for him in tough times. It's like, yeah, but what about like the rest of life?
Right.
There's like this whole other aspect to having fun and going out and doing things together and sharing interests.
Right. Right. Well, and it's kind of like looking at this card, right? This air guardian card, and that flowing energy of the wind, and how it can just like change directions like so quickly without really, like, it looks like any effort. And it can just pivot and then maneuver. And then if something's kind of blocking it, it just works around it. Right? So it's almost like that too, in a sense of that emotional aspect of it doesn't have to be one particular way, and you could be fluid in the way that you're engaging with people, in a way that's comfortable and respecting your boundaries, of course. But there's that element of, hey, we can just sit on the couch and watch television together, or we can go for a beach walk together, or we can make breakfast and banana pancakes. Right?
Yeah.
There's so many different ways that you can spend time, and you also feel into what's right in the moment. It doesn't have to be so structured.
Yeah, this feels very relevant to what the card says here, air guardian. And even just what you just described, even like connection and having fun together and baking pies or going for walks, that still feels like a way of guarding your frequency. It's like doing high frequency things to make sure your frequency stays high, and that connection of, fostering our relationships so we're not just there when people are having a tough time. Light workers generally like to save and martyr themselves in the process, and that's not really it, right? So even that, like, shifting our perception to how can we be there for others in a high frequency way, but do so from a space where we are guarding our own frequency and making sure we're good and like we're high frequency, so we don't fall into old programs or bad habits.
Right. Well, and I think we talked about this in the podcast before, but I know we talked about this earlier this evening about covering your bases, right? Taking care of your physical body. What does he or she need? Water, food, rest, fresh air, a walk on the beach, in the forest, whatever it is, playtime with your pup. And that right there, just listening, connecting, paying attention to your physical body can really make a huge difference to your ability to connect.
I find it so fascinating how one person can have one experience and another can have such a different experience, but it's the same reality or the same circumstance.
Right.
And that's what this perception card feels like to me, is like, and there's so many examples to go into, but it's like same situation, totally different responses. And it kind of feels like that, how can we shift our perception in a way where we're doing so in a high frequency way, or even just becoming aware, like expanding our awareness and broadening our perception. I think that can be a big part of a shift too, and realizing the connection we have as high frequency beings. So for example, back when the split was first starting, like physically becoming obvious with the whole coronavirus thing, there was a lot of tension in my then marriage. Tension being like my spouse at the time was totally buying it, the story, the narrative, and I wasn't. And it was a huge rift, obviously, right? And one thing led to another, and my high frequency tribe, you and Inelia and Larry and others in my tribe and my entourage, helped me to shift my perception and see that this is a higher self choice, that in some ways I was giving my power away, that I was walking on eggshells. And in a lot of ways, I decided to end it and end the marriage and split, literally. And in a lot of ways, this felt like a failure to me. Like, oh my God, I failed my marriage, or how did I not do this sooner? Like, all the signs were there, and now I just saw them, and, all these things. But what I didn't see at the time, and this helped me shift my perception about so many things, it's that I had orchestrated the people in my life to help me see that at the time when I needed it most, especially when surrounding myself consciously with high frequency people. And this is why it's so important to find your tribes and have high frequency connections, because even in that time of need, right, I had orchestrated other people, other beings, other connection points in my life to help me shift that perception and move into something more resonant with the path that I had chosen at a higher self level. So these shifts can come in so many different ways, right? And the biggest thing of it, or at least it feels like, is regardless, you're not alone, right? Just like you going over for a bath, or me figuring out, I need to divorce my husband. These shifts, they don't necessarily happen in isolation, right?
For sure.
You got good counsel and good feedback and support, and same, and that's important. The more eyes, the more we can see,
For sure. And, it's just like the same, the realization that viruses don't really exist. And maybe our immune system doesn't either.
In the way that we think, anyways.
Yeah. The way we think that And just that alone is like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? Right? Like, you don't necessarily, and I don't know enough about it yet to know the nuts and bolts of how the body works in the immune system in that way, and the perceptions of one sickness when you're near them, another person's sickness and you're near them. But it's not necessarily that you need to be concerned about, like, quote unquote, catching something.
Right.
Right. And like that alone, that changes, because that right there, if you're not walking around being concerned about catching something from another person, then you can drop another program of separation. Right?
That's such a massive shift in perception. Just the possibility of the virus isn't real.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bit of a game changer, right? Right. How many realities would shift?
Well, I'm listening to Dr. Tom Cohen, and we'll link in the show notes. But how, even just listening to how he describes how to isolate a virus, right? It's like, wait, this hasn't actually really been proven.
No, it's ridiculous.
So that's one perception, or perspective. And then another would, when you were mentioning about having your tribe and high frequency tribe, and I think you touched on such a great point, having your allies and your entourage. Because, for example, falling in love, right? And if you've done Inelia's relationships,
sex,
love and soulmates course, that one, we'll link it. Then you've heard how your awareness shrinks when you're falling in love. Literally, that's why it's the fall, because you're falling in love, your level of awareness shrinks. You no longer can see things from this larger perspective that maybe you had seen in the past. And I've been through that experience of falling in love and being like, oh my gosh, I'm so used to having this expanded awareness and I do my mystical work and this, that, and the other. This is crazy.
I can't form sentences. What's going on?
Right. But I remember going through that and then like turning to my tribe and turning to my allies, and it's like, it's okay. We're here with you. Don't worry. Like we'll keep our eyes wide open through this, right? And it's not like shifting responsibility to your tribe or your allies, but it's engaging them in just having that interaction and awareness. And if there's something maybe that they perceive or, something that comes up and you're not, you can have those conversations. I can say, Kara, what do you think about this? I've been exploring this experience or this situation that happened. And even being open to say, hey, Ash, maybe we could look at that. And it might not even be bad. It could be good things too. It could be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. So it's just another aspect of like, we are not meant to live in isolation. We are not meant to thrive and flourish in isolation. And in fact, I believe you can't thrive and flourish alone. You can do those things with others, however.
Yeah, we're a collective species. It's impossible to be isolated. I mean, you're on a desert island, cut from everyone else. Like, you're still connected with your environment at some level, even if you're quote unquote disconnected from the collective. Yeah, it's just the illusion of separation is so insidious, and it was a choice, right? And that's what the split is all about. Is the high frequency side of the split has decided to drop the illusion of separation and to expand awareness and to develop new high frequency ways of doing things, and that's a massive shift in perception on the planet,
for sure.
And that's what the split is about. But it can happen in the littlest of ways and in the biggest of ways. And one thing that I love about our tribe is I feel like we're constantly learning new things and sharing resources and info and tools and things, and it's just amazing. I think we were just like saying the other day, like how it feels like almost everything we've learned is just wrong and topsy-turvy, whether it's like how we think the heart works or viruses or even the food we eat and what's
healthy.
Yeah, like we're talking about dandelions and how like we were growing up, taught that dandelions are like weeds and we put all these toxic chemicals on them to get rid of them because they make our perfect green manicured lawns look icky yucky or whatever social program. And they're like, pure vitamin C and this amazing remedy and support for the human body. And
they grow like a weed.
And they're everywhere. And eating it locally, like from your own yard, is like so beneficial.
I'm drinking dandelion tea.
Exactly. It's just like, everything we've learned just feels topsy-turvy. And honestly, like, that's okay. I feel like that's a good sign of seeing we're having a shift in perception.
Agreed.
Which is awesome. So we're on the right track, dropping the illusion, which is good. And, we're not alone. The more perceiving done by others and us, then the more we can see as well.
Okay, I have one more example of shifting my perspective.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Or perception. So, with work, right, with my 9-to-5 day job, I am a workaholic. Hello, my name's Ashley, and I'm a workaholic.
Hi, Ashley.
This is where you say, I'm Kara.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kara. I am also a workaholic.
So, I mean, I love working. I know. It's also at the same point, there's good and bad things behind it, as anyone could imagine. And with it is really interesting when I started to open myself up to have more community and be engaged in more high frequency projects. And even with starting iBenz Academy, it was like my work was exploding. It's like, there's so much work to be done. I just need to work like 24/7. And there's just so much work I have to do. And I kept being in the perception, like, there's all this work that needs to be done. I need to do it. and it needs to happen now, and I'm so busy, and yada, yada, yada. And then it wasn't till finally, I've done, fortunately, a lot of training and mentoring with Inelia. It really helps. But finally, I started to see that this is me putting ownership on my work outside of me, because I needed to do it because of my manager. I needed to do it because of the CEO. I needed to do it because of a contractor, whatever reason. I'm putting those reasons like externally rather than realizing my own creation in the process, right? So I was giving my power away in that process. So once I shifted my perspective to realize that I'm making my work busy, I'm making my days full and crazy, quote unquote, or whatever it is. And so if I'm doing that, I'm the common denominator in the entire situation, then I can actually change it.
Right.
That changed everything.
Everything, yeah.
Yep.
Becoming consciously aware of it is like the first step, right? Because it's like so easy to blame and play victim aggressor. Like, I'm a victim, I'm so busy. And I've totally been through that experience too. Oh my gosh, this has happened to me. Like, that's the victim energy, right? But until we realize, oh, wait, this is the victim aggressor cycle. Oh, okay. Now I see it. Like, boom, step one. Taking conscious ownership of, all right, I was indulging in that. All right, good to know.
Yeah.
And then responding, right? Whether it's a change of habit or doing the fear processing exercise, or maybe even just how you change your behavior or relationships with your work or colleagues, like, big difference. So, yeah, becoming consciously aware of our patterns, our programs, that in of itself can be life-changing.
Oh, for sure. If I'm ever subconsciously trying to, let's say, sabotage or like somehow shrink my energy or my awareness field or anything, using my work is like my go-to.
Perfect excuse.
Perfect thing. I'll just like, boop. Okay, now my work's just gone crazy. I'm sorry, I'm too busy. I can't do anything. It's been, and admittedly, it's even been coming up lately. Whenever we start launching new courses and have all this energy going, my work starts picking up all of a sudden. And so now at least that dynamic, how I use my work to limit myself,
right,
is something that I haven't fully let go of. At the same time, it's way better. And now I've noticed it. Yeah. And I can pick up the signs, right? And I can, oh, okay, that's what's happening. All right, well, I don't want to do that anymore. So let's change that. And then that's another conversation. That's the instant manifestation workshop we can talk about another day.
Yeah. Or even before that, it's like the limitations, how is it serving you, right? Like, how does the work excuse serve, or how does the bad spouse or the obnoxious kids or the poor health or whatever, like these programs. Oh yeah,
the mandates from the government, the requirements at the school, the neighbors, the aunties, uncles, grandmas, grandpas, everybody.
How do these limitations serve us? And definitely an amazing course. I highly recommend taking it. But one of the main takeaways I had from that, for me personally in that experience or taking that class, is realizing just how much blame I put on everything else for the state of my life, when really, like, I'm in charge of my life. I'm the one responsible, able to respond to situations. And when we really look at what is this limitation and how is it serving us, like, how is being really busy at work serving us? It's a way to limit power, for not going all in, or maybe sabotaging good relationships, or not being fully in our physical bodies, or whatever. Like, there's so many things that come up. And again, just being aware of what's happening can be that first step, and then we can use some of the tools to process and change our programs in a conscious way. And that's when we kind of get into the workshop stuff, like you said. But yeah, it's just amazing how shifting our perception, it's so transformative. It's massive. It can be anyways if we allow it to be.
So on that note, I guess the question remains, and to the audience, listeners out there, we're talking to you.
Hello.
What in your life could you benefit from shifting your perception on? Maybe there's something that's feeling heavy. Maybe there's something that feels like it's not easy. Who knows what it might be? But, the telltale signs, right? When there's a little bit of a red flag, discomfort, unease,
Or
feeling disconnected. Yeah. And those can be signs of that. And then looking at, what if I had a different perception in this? I think Inelia has said it, and I don't recall where she got it from, but the phrase of, what would it look like if this was easy? Like, what would this feel like if this was easy? And oh my gosh, that right there, it just makes such a huge difference in the moment.
That's such a powerful tool. Like, if it's so great. It uses the power of the daydream to shift your perception on something almost instantly. Like, what would it look like if work wasn't busy? What would it look like or feel like if I didn't have to work? What would it look like? The possibilities are endless, right? But even just asking that simple question can do so much to shift our awareness or help us spot programs or even what limitations we might have, whether consciously or not, to keep that game going, right? And yeah, that's powerful stuff. So yeah, great tip and suggestion. What would it look like if it was easy? So yeah, that's the guidance from the High Frequency Human Collective of Earth.
Hey.
The Air Guardian.
Thank you, us.
Thank you, us.
That's good, great guidance.
Shift your perception. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think my cup is almost empty. Well, now it feels full.
My cup is full, and yet our teacup is empty.
There you go. My cup is full and my teacup is empty. So it's time to sign off. But thanks for joining us again here at Your Morning Cup with iBenz Academy.
See you next time.
Ciao.